Canton number 3, I guess. Never number 1, right?
If I can have your attention, please, let's go ahead and call the meeting to order. It's 6 o'clock. If you would, stand and join me while we pledge allegiance to the flag and remain standing to the invocation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Father, we thank you for tonight. We thank you for all that are here and for our city and all of our citizens. We also ask that you bless all of our Army personnel, all those that are overseas, and especially those people in Japan who were hit again today with more earthquakes and violence in their life. We ask that you just be with everyone and help us to be in agreement. All these things we pray in your name. Amen.
I'd like to welcome our guest visitors here tonight. And the first item is our 10-minute public input period. We have 2 individuals to sign up. It's Will Bruder first.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity. Recently, we've been hearing a lot about the regional transportation issue with the county and their wish list and so forth. So it started me thinking again about a project that was originally on there, that had been on there, and I got to check and sure enough it still is. I'd like to address the portion of the ARC plan that's under the city of Canton. It's called the Hickory Flat Road Extension. A little history on that. Back in the late 70s, early 80s, when Cecil Bowling was mayor, this is before 575, and at that point, Cartersville Street intersected with the highway over there near the fairgrounds. I guess the media Jack probably would remember that, not Gene might. But there was an intersection there. Well, it was a dangerous intersection. They took it away. So the city started asking the DOT to help us find another route. DOT, they came up with this preliminary idea of connecting Marietta Road across the river, coming over there. So it got on DOT's plan. Nothing was ever done about it. Then eventually here came ARC, certainly somehow got put on their books. 2001 comes the LCI project down here at River Mill. And the issue came up again with some wild drawings of a traffic circle down here at the end of East Marietta Street, and that connector coming to join that, and then to go on and connect to Waleska Road. In spite of the fact that that's almost 100% floodplain. That there's the ARCs, it's still on their books. It's a local project, $12.5 million, which I think is a joke. I don't think you could come anywhere near building something like that for $12.5 million. I talked to Jane Hayes at ARC a couple of days ago, and she has told me that it is to be dropped from their short-term and long-term plan. It will not be done. It is still a part, during the LCI project back in 2001, it was adopted as part of Canton's thoroughfare plan. I'm here to ask you tonight to remove it from the thoroughfare plan. It is a crazy idea, crazy plan that has no merit, and certainly I don't see anybody here thinking in terms of spending whatever to build a road across the bottoms. One other point about it, if you look at it from a traffic standpoint, that would put traffic coming out, what, 25 feet from the railroad on one side. You're already talking about putting a traffic light at Railroad Street. What kind of a traffic mess would you have there with 2 traffic lights and the railroad in between with less than 50 feet in it? So I hope you'll give it consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. I tend to concur with that assessment of that as well, and you know, I would certainly recommend that we forward this on to our next meeting for discussion and perhaps action at that time. Does anyone have any comments about that you would like to make? Yeah. Thank you. The next person on our public input here is Elisa Sisson.
Hi, good evening, Mayor, City Council. My name is Elisa Sisson. I'm here on behalf of the Canton Paul Park. I'm the president of the 501c3 organization. We have been put together to do fundraising and bring the park to Canton. I wanted to give you guys an update. On Saturday, April 16th, we are still a go for our grand opening. In an effort to add value to everything that we're doing in the community, we have planted 14 beautiful, huge trees out at the field today. That include several red, maples and oaks. We also are ready to continue with our Adopt a Mile program to benefit that area as well. And we've also installed our dog stations at the park. We recently held a fundraiser which benefited 134 pets in Canton within a couple of hour period. And that was a great thing because we did have animal owners who came to us and said, their husband or family member died last year. They are in a financial budget where they would not be able to care for their pets otherwise. So that was a great benefit to the community as well. But I just wanted to come and give everyone an update on behalf of the Paul Park, and certainly welcome any questions.
Anyone have any questions? The trees you put out, were they inside or outside the fence this
They
time?
are inside the fence. We have
Okay.
8 red maples, 1 pin oak, 1 maple trident, and 4 willow oak trees.
Good. And how tall are those?
Well, they're going to be huge.
I thought
They're
they
currently
now.
about 15 feet tall right now, so
Oh, wow,
that we can
okay.
get between 20 and 30 feet. So we were very careful to stay away from the power lines and
Right.
get the call before you dig routine done. So.
As you and I talked recently, I really would like to see personally some evergreen trees or
Yes.
something on the outside of that fence to sort of block that from some of the neighborhood there, because I've had a couple of, 2 or 3 calls about that, and I think that would be
Yes.
beneficial and would relieve some anxieties
Sure.
that some of the neighbors may have.
Yeah, so we did get out there and put a little, maybe 8 inches of a timber wall right there, and that's where we are going to put the walkway and some natural area, but those types of trees as well. So we are planning for that too.
Jack, go ahead.
What time is the opening going to be on Saturday?
On the 16th, it's going to be 11 a.m.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I just wanted to follow up to our conversation.
Yes.
I didn't find out anything new.
Okay.
So what you got, go for it.
Perfect. Okay, great. Thank
Okay.
you.
Anyone else? Thank you, Alyssa,
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Have a good night.
Rick, did you need to speak?
No,
Okay.
I was just a
With
placeholder.
her. Okay, good. Thank you. All right. Under old business, the utility deposit rate ordinance, first reading. You want to handle that one?
Well,
We have the ordinance itself here?
Well, you recall that you had decided to establish a water sewer rate, deposit rate. And this has nothing to do with the use rate in the amount of water extraction. This is just a deposit rate.
And it's the same as Cherokee County, right?
To establish it at the same level as Cherokee County. It's my understanding, Jeff, that the ordinance itself does not establish the rate. What it does is so that you won't have to change the ordinance if in the future you change the rate. You are adopting a rate that allows you to adopt a rate schedule. I think that's correct.
That's the normal way that would work. Yes.
Okay. So this would be the first reading tonight for the ordinance which allows you to adopt a rate schedule. The immediate one is assumed would be concurrent with that of Cherokee County. In the future, city councils could could adjust the rate or amend the rate up or down without having to go through the process of changing the ordinance itself.
Are there any questions about that? Very short.
I don't see on this sheet here where it matches up with Cherokee County. I see what we currently are doing. What we talked about, is that, you're saying it's the first reading of this ordinance, but at our then council meeting, we will be able to vote on that rate change.
You can vote on the
I
specific
think we
rate
need
change.
to move ahead on that, and so everybody's aware of, we should look at it and,
Right.
and have it on the agenda to make that recommendation change.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. So this be considered the first reading of the utility deposit rate ordinance. And the next reading will be on 2 weeks from now. Under new business, nothing. City manager's report. Mr. Wood?
I think we could start with our annual financial audit report. Mr. James Bent, the CPA from Malden and Jenkins, is here to provide copies of that CAPR report to the council.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As Mr. Wood said, my name is James Spence. I'm with Malden and Jenkins. We were the independent auditors to come in and do the audit for the city's September 30th, 2010 books. I believe you have in your agenda packets a copy of your comprehensive annual financial report, which is your financial statements. And then you should also have a copy of the annual audit agenda, which is what I'll kind of read through tonight. That's kind of just a summary of the results of the audit. If you'll look on page 2 of that report, you'll see the city's management is responsible for the annual financial report, and it's our responsibility as the auditors to give an opinion on those reports. And we did give a clean opinion this year, which is what you've received in the past. If you'll go to page, excuse me, page 3, starting on page 3 through page 5 is sort of a Cliff Notes version of the footnotes in your financial report. They'll kind of give you a quick glance of what each footnote is telling you about your statements. On page 7 through page 9 is some of our required communication that we have to have with management. And that's there for you to review. On pages 10 through page 14, you'll see some of our management recommendations and findings that we've had this year. These have all been communicated with management, and our understanding is they are already in the process of taking the corrective action on these issues. Yes, sir.
All right, this is a question too.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll look at you.
You're speaking to me, I understand.
Okay. Let me find which stack I'm looking at here. Okay. In the back, in reference to that, we have a number, again, at page 95 in your Bible. And on 96, it said audit adjustments total approximately $348,700 is needed to correct the report. And each time we come up with this, we have the audit's response that, okay, and it says on page 97, this is the city, we concur with the findings, we will take necessary steps in the future to ensure the expenses and related balance sheets accounts are properly recorded, and it goes again and again and again. We had that last year, and my question is, how come we got it again this year with these concerns brought by you? And we were supposed to correct them last year, and now we're looking at them again.
The repeats, that's what you're saying. yeah.
Yes. And it goes right on through basically 98, 99, 100 again. It's the same as last year. It concerns me that we are not in compliance, but yet it's things that we're going to change, and it says, we agree with you, and we're going to do it, but how come we get it again?
Bryce, can you speak to any of those more authoritatively than can I?
And I'm sorry that I haven't given you advance notice. I've been out of town, got back in. and
Not a problem.
Some other issues, so I'm not trying to do it, but I'm just getting caught up here today.
I will say real quick, some of these findings, or a lot of those that you just referenced that are repeats from last year, the standards have kind of required anytime there's a journal entry, they've kind of lowered the bar to what, there's no longer any judgment involved as to whether or not we can or cannot report things as findings. So a lot of these in the past probably would never have shown up as audit findings. They would have just been adjustments to the statements, but with the standards the way they are, we do have to communicate these issues. So some of these in the past would have not been considered that significant of an issue, but with the standards the way they are now, we're kind of tied, and there's no more judgment involved from an auditor standpoint.
The staffing is referred to on a number of those sections. And I understand our staffing situation, but when we say we're going to correct it, and we do have limited staffing, how do we correct it? That's the question. And I don't think we're going to have anybody slap cuffs on us for doing anything wrong. It's just, it's there again. Okay.
Okay, and which ones specifically, are you talking about all of them, right?
Generally, I can give you
Go through it.
section 8's, excuse me, section 95, 96, 97, 98,
Okay, well, on page,
101, and 102.
okay, so that's all the findings. On page 95, the restatement of the beginning, the opening net assets, that is as a result of the mast arms and some other issues where the beginning amounts had to be restated.
I appreciate, I don't need that, because I
Okay.
can follow those numbers. What I need is say, what are we doing to try to alleviate from this happening in 2011? Staffing is a problem.
Right.
So how do we avoid it? And if we can't, we can't. Just say we can't.
We are looking at all the issues that we can try to address, segregation of duties and staffing issues, get the response, and James will be working with us on that. We've had some discussions already.
I think part of this, Mr. Beresford, if I understand what Mr. Price is saying correctly, is part of it is simply revealing, excuse me, I ate peanuts right before I came up here, they got caught right. Part of it is simply revealing discoveries that we have made, and the mast arms would be an example of them, of things that we've inherited, that it may be sometime after the fact before they're discovered. Is that correct? Is that a correct statement?
That is correct. Yeah, and there are things in here that we can definitely correct going forward. There's some items that we didn't get the books, all the adjustments posted to the books before we presented the books to them. So we had to we ended up presenting the adjustments to them for them to make. So that results in a finding. That's a lot of these recognition findings. So,
Okay, I just bring it.
And that's gonna be a staffing issue.
Yeah, well, I mean, and it's something that we can correct it going forward.
Inco's gonna help us.
Yes.
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 But, you know, it wasn't implemented until after this, so it really didn't affect this.
I'm talking, 10's done, I'm talking 2011.
Right,
So how we get it off to pass.
right.
Okay. One other on under the deposits on page 101, where we had the $608,000, $760 deposit.
Right.
And you guys caught it and said it wasn't being protected, and now it's protected. So,
Actually, we closed those accounts. We closed those accounts after year end. Those are, when we did the consolidation of Bank of North Georgia, those were some of the accounts that got closed. So we no longer have money there that is in excess, well, we don't have any money there. Right.
Do we have procedures in place now that would ensure that the funds that we have are properly collateralized, that, in other words, in the institutions that we have?
Yes.
Okay.
now with that, is that something we can have on a quarterly report on underneath the finances and say,
We could add a statement from the bank,
Sure.
every quarter, if you wanted to, when you do a budget amendment,
Yeah.
that verifies that they have adequate collateralization.
by no means am I trying to micromanage.
No, I mean, because if you had a situation where they were cited by FDIC or whomever, and we didn't know it, we might not know, we may not know it until, which was the case with the prior bank. We didn't know it because we weren't, they should have notified us when they were no longer collateralizing those deposits.
Do they provide, Mr. Price, copies of pledged securities, receipts that we maintain,
We get monthly statements.
showing that it is collateralized? So we wouldn't necessarily have actual receipts of pledged securities, so forth? Or is it just a printout that you get, or what?
We get a monthly, it's a monthly statement that lists out everything.
Oh.
That they, it lists what they have, invested in to collateralize the money that we have there.
Is there any, is that normal, James, or would you normally have actually, receipts of actually pledged securities?
No, sir, what you are
Used to have
receiving
enough.
is what you normally would get. The bank will send you a monthly statement just identifying all the securities that are pledged in the city's name to secure your accounts. And then you can just compare that to the actual balance you have in your bank accounts each month to see
Is
if you
there,
are secure.
is there a verification of that? Or you just take their word for it, the list? Is that verified at all in any way?
It just no, I guess it's just coming from the bank. Are you verifying it, or?
That's what I'm saying, I guess we verifying that what they say on the list is actually there.
I suppose you could get in touch with the bank and have them provide you the actual copies of the securities. But
Right.
that's not normal. I mean, I guess if you wanted to go to that extreme, you could.
Quite a few years ago, that's exactly what they did, was provide you actual copies of the securities that were pledged to the security for those funds, but I guess that time's changed. Does anyone else have any comments?
No, well, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to concur with Mr. Burke, because I'd already spoken with Mr. Price and Mr. Wood about some of these same concerns, and just wanted to concur with that, with him.
Anyone else?
That they would be addressed.
Anyone else? Okay. You have something else, Barry? Oh, you're not through, are you? Go ahead.
I don't want to jump ahead if you got it in here, but one of my favorite subjects is the unassigned fund balance. And on page 8, it's the major governmental funds. The general fund is operating fund of the city at the end of the current fiscal year. Unreserved fund balance, we call it now unassigned fund balance, but the general fund was $1,737,473. We have been looking at a unassigned fund balance of $1,553,638. So it's an extra $183,835, which is good news. Is that right?
If you've been looking at 1.5, yes, 1.7.
Yes, okay, great. So, when we get to your update on the financial, I want to make a note.
Okay, will do.
Thank you.
Thank you, James. Appreciate it. Scott, thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Have a good night.
Second, I guess we're there. Now, second quarter budget amendment. Got questions on those?
Yes.
Any questions?
Yes, on that statement, and this is in February, so I understand we haven't caught up with it yet, but under the new, next update, we should see that being, 1.7, whatever it was. Correct?
Less, his
No,
first.
no, if I understand his question correctly, Mr. Mayor, respectfully, I think what he's wanting was whatever it was as of September 30th.
Right.
So if the CFO agrees with the auditor's finding of the 1.7, no problem.
I think I saw two heads nod, but I think it, okay, great, thank you.
I think what the mayor was about to point out, though, again respectfully, is that number might be being impacted as a result of some of these other things we're looking at. But we would start with your premise, yes, sir.
Okay. Then, are we ready to talk about the
Yes, sir.
the amendment?
Yes, sir.
Okay, on page 357, this might be just clarification because I'm looking at, you can see it highlighted. Underneath that, point 3, it's a rate study, and it says unassigned fund balance, and it goes underneath the water sewer. $39,800. Was that taken out of that unassigned fund?
No, sir, that would be water and sewer.
Okay, but it's called unassigned fund balance, and that's what's thrown me, because every time
You could have an unassigned fund balance for any of your different accounts.
That's, okay. So, down, none of these fell underneath the general fund.
None of which, all of those in your far
Yes, it
left
did.
column would.
Yes, it did. The general fund was $183,277.
Let's take them one by one.
Fair.
Okay. The 99,900 is the GFA grant that bought the new air conditioners for, forgot now where all, I think, here and
Please.
the fire. That money was shown on the revenue side of the 10 budget. It was not reflected as an expenditure in the 11 budget, so that's being picked up here. That expense is being picked up here. The Great Sky Pump Station, the rate study, and the water and sewer infrastructure study, that's the Wolpert study. That's about $300,000 plus or minus. I think maybe a little over $300,000. That was not, none of that was included in the 2011 budget. It is included in the calculations that Raftellus gave us as a result of their rate study on Tuesday night of last week.
And what change number are you at?
That would be the far right numbers, Mr. Beresford, the 168,785, the 39,8, and the 101,395.
Okay.
Okay, the mast arms, I think we all know about and have talked about that. Obviously, that was not anticipated in the budget. We didn't even know about that issue. So that's general fund. Laurel Canyon transition cost, remember we had to go back and do some surveying to clean up those boundaries, and we had some power cost for which I think we were or are being reimbursed, but that's where that $10,000 right there is. The administrative impact fee transfer is simply is capturing a portion of the administration for the impact fee.
Mr. Woods, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
When I say it's under the contingency, I have no problem with that. That's what that fund's for.
Yes, sir.
So when I flag the unassigned, that's what,
Right.
and I wanna use up the contingency fund before we start dipping into.
Right.
Yeah.
And when we get through this listing, it'll be used up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Well, and remember that it was $600,000, if I'm not mistaken, and $450,000 of that is going to the roads project this year anyway. So you didn't have $150 left.
It looked like, my total was 617,292, but anyway, go ahead.
Basket watering, I think we talked about it at a prior meeting. Encode, everybody knows about. I don't want to beat any of this to death. Let me point out item 10 there because it really deserves, the hospital deserves some credit on that. We asked for them to consider donating the cost to us for some automatic electronic defibrillators to be used one on each floor of this building, and one in the police department, and one in the public works department. And Northside Hospital was gracious enough to make that contribution to us, and at some point in time would like for them to be appropriately recognized for that. Big Oak, everybody knows about that. Item 12, those were capital items in the budget that had initially been anticipated to be paid from our bond funds, the $8 million. There's been some discussion, I know the mayor and I and Mr. Price discussed last week the advisability of using those bond funds for those items. At the time of that discussion, we were not sure what we legally could do. I think Mr. Price has subsequently had a discussion with Earl Taylor, our bond counsel, who has indicated that if city council amends the language in that program, that is an allowable expense. Now, you can decide from that whether or not that's what you want to do, but I think the question is that the legal hurdle has been overcome, and then you decide if that's the right policy you want to implement. Street paving, I think everybody knows about, and you can see from that line 13 entry there that we're cutting in by $215,000 there to our unassigned fund balance. In other words, we would have exhausted that contingency. 14 is primarily, and I want to talk a little bit more about this, and if it's okay, Mr. Mayor, I might do that right now. So, slight deviation, but it's addressed in here under property and casualty coverage. What we were paying $306,000 a year for property and casualty coverage with, I think it was $1,000 across the board deductible, wasn't it, Cody, for everything. The best quotes we were able to get this year were at $355,000. If we maintained our deductibles the same. So that's an increase of right at $50,000 increase. If, however, we decided to increase our deductibles from $1,000 across the board to $2,500 for autos and $5,000 for all others, we could reduce that premium by about that same amount of money, by about $50,000, and scroll it back to $305,000. About what we're paying this about to expire policy year. We went back and looked at the 2 prior years in terms of our deductible history to see what kind of year we would have had we had the higher deductibles. What would our total cost have been? And the total cost with the lower deductible would have been about $363,000. And with the higher deductible, again, based on what our deductible history was, would have been about $318,000. Total cost, that's your premiums and your out-of-pocket deductible. Now, having said that, that's just looking at a 2-year history. There's no guarantee of what next year will be or future years will be. That's just looking at that. But if you would like, we can, we're programmed here, from what you see with these budget amendments, we're programmed to go with a higher premium of $355. If you wanna scroll up our deductibles and scroll back our premiums, then we can, at a subsequent budget amendment time, change that number, accordingly by about $50,000. That makes sense? But we need to make a decision, soon, because our policy year begins May 1. So the question is, do you want to save $50,000 on the premium side and have a higher deductible, or do you want to maintain the lower deductible and pay the higher premiums?
How many claims?
I don't know the number, Mr. Beresford, but it amounted to,
It was 4 in 2009 and 16 so far this year.
Once.
some of those are not settled. That's a little bit of a misleading number, so.
Some are still open.
4 and then 16.
I'd like to get an itemized listing of those when we can.
Sure.
See where-
What those claims actually are. I didn't realize I had 16 this year.
9 of them were automobile accidents. And 7 are other
Oh,
liability
okay.
property.
9 were automobile accidents this year.
Right. 1 in one big city hall, and the other 6 are open liability cases.
I think we got driver's training.
So, okay, we do automobile and do other. And then we can see, because other, there's only 2 or 3, and we're gonna look at a $5,000 deductible, then we're talking 15,000. That's a chance.
On something other
On
than,
some.
other than automobile.
Right, if it's automobiles, and we're having 16 automobiles, then we need to fall back to the, so we need to,
You can think about it, we'll have to decide the thing tonight, but we do need to decide something by the next meeting. It would be helpful to me, and I think in turn helpful to y'all, if we get that information to you, and then we develop some consensus so that we can take a final decision, make a final decision 2 weeks from tonight.
we're,
Yes, ma'am.
You will be giving us a breakdown of the claims and,
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, we'll get that to you next week. Okay, I think that's probably what we have there, Mr. Mayor, unless there's some other questions.
The only comment I would like to make is on item 12 there, in which the $997,977 amount is actually bond money. That was money that we had actually, that had been borrowed for the reservoir, for purposes dealing with the reservoir. And I think the 997 is a projected amount of how much we might have left over, assuming that the reservoir is complete. I would hesitate utilizing that money for any projects other than the reservoir itself. And otherwise, what we're doing is essentially borrowing another $1 million. If we're just going to take that from the bond proceeds for the reservoir and move it over to other water and sewer related projects, then we've essentially borrowed another $1 million. I'd personally rather see our debt restructured or whatever we need to do in order to give that money back if we have it left over to have to pay back down on that debt. But that's just me. Okay, next item.
Okay, resolution to adopt capital improvements element in the 5-year short-term work program. I think I adequately explained that in your briefing letter, but if there are any questions, we'll be glad to address them.
I'm sorry, where were you?
It's D, item D. Yes. Capital improvements element.
All right.
Go ahead.
In the resolution of need to prepare an urban redevelopment plan, you will recall this is in conjunction with the discussion at the prior meeting with the Cherokee Industrial Development Authority about the establishment jointly with the county opportunity zone. Again, what this resolution would do would be to authorize the preparation of that plan. The plan itself would still come back to council and be approved by council and ultimately, of course, by the DCA. But your action 2 weeks from tonight would be to authorize preparation of the plan.
That would also include the city of Ball Ground, I believe.
It does include Ball Ground,
Now,
right.
what is is there a cost to us on this?
Not a cost to us, it's just a staff cost to us on that.
Okay. No outside. Yes, ma'am.
I was not here for that meeting, I apologize. How is that going to benefit us as a city?
Well-
Opportunity, so, because I'm looking, this is something that benefits the county.
Well, the city as well, yeah.
I know that the city is a
Well,
part of the county.
part of the
I
opportunity
wanna know
zone.
Overall, how's it working? Do we have any areas within the city that we qualify as an opportunity?
That's exactly what this is. This is gonna develop the plan, which is basically over toward Riverstone, I think, and Bluffs area, all the way up. And,
So that's what qualifies an opportunity for?
Yeah.
well, apparently that's what the plan they're developing, yes.
If it's 15% poverty, I believe is correct, 15% poverty, or adjoining a census tract, it's 15% poverty. And, this area has been identified along with the part of the unincorporated area as potentially meeting that criteria, but what this plan will do will be to establish, delineate that area and define that area. And then again, that plan will come back to you also. The benefit of the opportunity zone itself primarily is going to be job tax credits. So that's a recruitment
Does
tool
it
for.
use recruitment of industry? and
Yes.
commercial and
We'd like to see if we couldn't get the downtown area going into, because it's cut off at the Riverstone. And the merchants in the Riverstone area will benefit from this. But our merchants in the downtown. Now, I talked with Mr. Patton about the enterprise zone. The enterprise zone, I thought, were in the downtown, but we're not. We will be looking at that for next year. But I hate to have the opportunity zone folded in without having the downtown benefit from this. So there is maybe we need a trade-off or something to be able to pick that up.
We can certainly look at that. Again, it's going to be, it's based on census tract information. It's not really our discretion, but it,
Crest,
right.
and we can look around our neighborhood here and say, we are in a depressed area.
And we'll certainly look at that as part of that plan, yes, sir.
Just make sure that the swing will not be cut off the top of it. But
I would think that if we did include that and had the urban redevelopment plan in hand, then we could perhaps divide out an area, I'm not sure, Ken, you can tell me, divide out an area of downtown and create, if we decided to, an enterprise zone for that area, as opposed to just an opportunity zone.
What has been discussed with Junior Gerard, Main Street Program Coordinator, is there is currently an enterprise zone that's created for the River Mill LCI area. During this year, expand the enterprise zone designation to take in all of the Main Street downtown area. And once enterprise zone designation is obtained, then turn around and submit to Georgia DCA to have that enterprise zone designated as an opportunity zone. Part of the reasoning behind the current urban redevelopment plan and opportunity zone in the 575 airport area, one of the concerns with expanding it to include the downtown area is the amount of acreage that is already proposed. The state is probably gonna kick part of it out anyway. And we thought it'd be better to work towards enterprise zone designation for the downtown area, get that in place, and not deal with an urban redevelopment plan for the downtown area, and then do opportunity zone after enterprise zone designation is awarded for all of the downtown area, the Main Street program.
But now, to be an enterprise zone, you have to have an urban redevelopment plan or be an opportunity zone. Is that not correct?
No, sir. You have to submit documentation to Georgia Department of Community Affairs to get enterprise zone designation. Opportunity zone can only be created by two methods. One is the area is already designated as an enterprise zone, or you have to prepare and adopt an urban redevelopment plan. You kind of had it reversed. You have enterprise zone, you have to submit some documentation to DCA, but it is not necessarily an urban redevelopment plan that you have to submit to get enterprise zone designation.
But what we're talking about at the Bluffs is an opportunity
Zone, correct.
All right, that's principally job tax credits.
Yes,
An
sir.
enterprise zone is actually property tax credits or other things you could, enhancements that you could, or incentives that you
Other
could
local
use.
fees and things of that nature are included with enterprise zone as well.
But are you saying you don't have to have an urban redevelopment plan to become an enterprise zone?
No,
You don't have to be an opportunity zone?
No.
one has federal ordination, the opportunity zone, and the other one is simply a state program.
In your opening comment, you said something that was very good. You said this year, downtown will have an enterprise zone.
There is already in existence, part of the downtown area is contained within the enterprise zone, the River Mill LCI. It does not include all of the boundary for the Main Street program. And what I have been working with Ms. Gerard on is submitting a request to expand the existing enterprise zone to take in all of the Main Street area, which would include all of North Street, Main Street, East and West Marietta.
Okay, and that's our goal for this year.
Correct.
Okay. The other thing is that the longer we hold up the opportunity zone, others throughout the state are throwing their hat in the ring. We need to move on this.
Let me ask you a question, another question here follows now. An opportunity zone allow job tax credits, right?
Yes,
Does an enterprise zone allow job tax credits?
not against income taxes.
Okay, so the question I have then is, would you want downtown to be an opportunity or an enterprise zone? That'd be my question.
Ultimately, I think the city would want it to be an opportunity zone.
So why don't we do this urban redevelopment plan up front, and then it could be an opportunity zone without going to this expansion of an enterprise zone?
If we add all of downtown area,
Is that confusing?
I'm pushing 1,300 acres in the proposed OZ zone area now. I have grave concerns that DCA is gonna kick out an awful lot of that property and not allow it to be within an opportunity zone area. With the county properties and with city ball ground properties, basically DCA likes these to be smaller areas. There's nothing to say that we can't do another urban redevelopment plan for the downtown area. I just thought it would help speed things along, work on enterprise zone, and then turn right around and go OZ
Okay.
for the downtown
Special.
area.
Mr. Pat, when we spoke in reference to, we were talking about lopping off this top piece up here that gives us back acreage. And it's not swapped for acreage down here, but it will give us some acreage if we can pull that in.
That acreage is not in the OZ
This acreage up
package.
here,
That is in the urban redevelopment plan area because of foreclosure rates.
this boundary
Those
line, this boundary line shows it was.
is in the urban redevelopment plan boundary area. That is different than what the opportunity zone application area would be.
Why would you do a plan on an area you didn't intend to include in the actual
Because
zoning
that
application?
That property is residential and it cannot be included in opportunity zone, but there are some distress conditions with those residential areas that help enhance the opportunity zone application for those commercial and industrial properties. That's the reason for including those residential properties in the urban redevelopment plan, to support our contention for opportunity zone for those commercial industrial properties.
Okay.
Back
One more
to
time,
One more.
and then we're through.
No, no, hey. Once again, we're looking at a time frame here that if we don't get our hat in the ring, we could lose out because the governor set a certain amount of monies for these programs. The quicker we can act on this, the better it's gonna be. So that's more important. We need to move ahead.
Thank you. Okay.
I won't lose any.
Next item.
Walmart is going to be, doing some, remodeling, and they've asked for authority to, do some of their construction work after hours. You have the authority under the code to give them that permission. My feeling would be that Walmart will operate with a level of safety and noise control, and that they're isolated enough that it's not going to pose a problem being their neighbors or something. So I wouldn't have the record for problem recommending that, but, take that action 2 weeks from tonight.
Yes, ma'am.
One of my concerns, I know where the Walmart's located, I just know they got that hotel, and I think we have some residents that are around there, is that, Walmart here. It's not gonna be disturbing any residential areas to work there because,
I think most of this is interior work. We can
Okay.
be sure that's the case, and report that back to you. I think most of this, I'm sure there'll be some cosmetic work outside.
If it disturbs them,
It's referred to.
Yeah, we can stop it. Sorry.
It was referred to as repainting the building exterior, resurfacing stucco, putting in some new exit doors. So it sounded like most of it's gonna be inside, but that shouldn't make too much noise there, so.
It's not a real big ticket item.
So you have to wait 2 weeks, or we will say go.
If you want to take action, I'm not objecting to that. That's y'all's call.
Don't think it's an emergency, so I think that was a prefer we did not.
Con Road, that is simply the swapping of some right of ways, as a result of the realignment of that road. We're getting some from the county and giving some to the county. Cobb area will offer that tax. That's just a property swap as a result of the realignment of Con Road. Election site fees, I'm leaving to y'all's discretion. I didn't, the issue's been out there.
Bob?
Yeah, I'd like to address that because since I brought it up the first time, and that if I had my way, we'd shut the whole thing down because we have lost $90,000 for each year for the last 2 years, and in the month of January, we lost $8,500. I didn't get the figures for February, but as I informed council earlier, I had requested Mr. Kangemi to put up a sign limiting the dumping to Canton City residents only at the current rates and not changing the rates because that's council's decision. And I'm not sure if he has done that or not, but just to give people advance notice. And what Mr. Kangemi has suggested is that instead of shutting it down, that we have limited it to Canton residents and we increase the fees to $20 per vehicle, which would mean if a truck came in pulling a trailer, it'd be two vehicles. So it'd be $40 and then $40 for a box truck. And I thought perhaps we ought to go with what his suggestion is and then monitor it for a couple of months to see if it's working for us. If it's not, we either raise the fees or do something different, because everybody else around here is charging $40 or $50.
Yes, ma'am.
Did this continue to indicate that would be a break-even deal for the city if we maintain that?
More or less. I mean, we didn't do any specific accounting, but he felt that if we had those prices, that we would probably break even. I don't think we're going to make any money on it, but I don't think we should. Yeah, as long as we don't lose, I'll be happy.
I think what you're gonna see when you do that is that your mom and pop taking a couple of loads off that's not a pickup truck or a bigger truck or something, they're gonna stop doing it. and you're gonna end up with a greater percentage of your pickups and maybe contractors and so forth coming in there at $20 as opposed to going. I don't know, I do agree we need to limit it to city residents and identify those in some manner. And, you know, we could certainly try it at that, at $20, see what happens, and, you know, we're always subject to change our mind. You said 20, didn't you?
20 per SUV, but a box truck would be $40.
What kind of truck?
Well, he called it a box truck, I don't know.
You talking about 3 axles, or what are you talking about?
Just one axle, just a box truck, like a U-Haul truck, you know? Big box truck.
Box truck, okay.
Like
What about a
your-
dump truck? How much would that cost, 20 or 40?
40.
Okay, but it's not a box, okay. I mean, how you gonna describe these things? Unless you do it by axles or something. Huh?
Make them all for it.
I think you really will cut down on the garbage, and you know, and that may be the goal there, I don't know. I think it is a good service that's provided for residents, similar to chopping up your brush and stuff there along the roadway, limbs and what have you. I think it's a good service to be able to clean out your basement or whatever and throw it in the back of your truck, go over there and dump it in one of those dumpsters.
Question is, how soon are we gonna come out with our new water billing?
The new bills?
New bills.
Beginnings this month, about the middle of this month.
Okay, so then we can start.
Put messages.
Put the message on that. So what we need to do in 2 weeks is agree on your proposal. Can we have that on the agenda for?
Yeah, I think we should put that on the next agenda.
Right.
And then we can decide what fees we want to include at that time.
And then we can start printing that on the, so that's good. That should go with the concert.
Yeah. Is tractor trailer a box truck too? I mean, I'm trying to figure out what is it. I've seen U-Hauls that's this big, and I've seen them that's this big.
No, it's not, it's square. Jim.
What's that?
It's just kind of a big square box.
Well, I've seen little squares, but I mean, it looks like a box to me. Is there a different capacity for a box truck?
How about weight?
Well, we don't have any scales. That's all I know. We really ought to have that. That's the fairest way to do it. Anyway, okay, next item.
Let me just say, in response to a point Mr. Rush made, that I asked Mr. Ken Jimmy not to put any signage up that changes fees or use provisions pending action by council. I didn't think that we ought to be too presumptuous about that. So we'll make those changes as soon as we get council direction, but I asked him to defer that pending council action. Haygood property, not sure what to say exactly about that. There are still some issues. We have asked for a second appraisal on that property. I hope to have that appraisal available for you tonight. It has been delayed. I hope it will be available next week, and we'll get that to you as soon as we can. Retiree health insurance questions. I think Mr. Beresford had asked a question at the last meeting about how many employees that we have that are currently are 60 years of age or older and have 20 years of service. And as I think I mentioned in my briefing letter to you, we don't have any that fit that specific criteria.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question in regards to that. I don't know, Mr. Wood, you may be able to answer, I'm not sure, but just for point information. If you were to go with a stipulation such that the council saw fit to do a retiree plan, at 63, and I know you say we don't have any employees that follow that care, but we do have employees who go beyond the 20 years of service to the city. That would not be 60 years of age, and I think they are getting ready to retire. I guess my question is, what is that saying to those employees? Could they look at this as reverse ageism? If we don't look at maybe those that are 56, 59, 57, and have given to this city 31 or more years of service. Was that taken into consideration when y'all discussed this last time it came up?
I would think we'd ask our attorney if he would have an opinion relative to, I would think the city would be able to establish a cutoff point without, any concern for that other than our own humanitarian concern. But, legally, I would think that we could cut off at 60 with X number of years. Now, I don't think it's a legal question.
Okay, well, let me rephrase it. What if we were to look at age 60 and or 30 plus years? I don't know how these decisions are going to affect the pocketbook of the city. And I guess I'm asking, could you research that? If you're looking at taking action on this at the next council meeting?
We need the question to be, if we wanted some sort of actuary, if we wanted our brokers to conduct or authorize some sort of actuary that would give you the what ifs, I think we need as clear a definition of what it is, who it is by class that you would want to include. So in other words, they can't, as I mentioned in my briefing letter, there are just endless array of variables of combinations of age and years of service. As I mentioned, we've got 10 employees that are age 55 or less, but who've got 20 years or more of service, and some of them have 30 years or more of service, but are not even 55 years of age yet. So you can get into a lot of different variables.
Mr. Bearsville, Mr. Rush, then Mr. Bearsville.
Okay, two comments. One is that typically, in my experience in industry, when you're making that kind of a judgment, it's a combination, it's an additive number, say 60 and 20 is 80. So anybody with that's age 55 with 25 years of seniority would hit the 80 number, and they would qualify for the retirement. That's what I've seen in industry anyway. But as far as commentary, one of the comments I heard from one of our employees here is that this proposal is just plain unfair. No editorial.
Okay, Mr. Bearsville.
The issue of cost, the employee, when they decide to retire, or they have retired and want to stay on, they're paying their own premium. So there's no cost to us. So that's a viewpoint.
The only cost would be any administrative fees involved. Well, along with the, I guess, potential for actually affecting your experience based on the elderly.
Your pool cost could be high.
Well, yeah, but you just pointed out the 65-20 rule, or whatever you want to call it, the 85. Those are all accounted for in the actuaries when they're doing that in this stuff, and we had asked for that. I thought they were going to come back with it, but being that we haven't decided what we're going to call this, they haven't done anything. But again, to that number that you're referring to in here, it's a small number. It's not. If you're dealing off of 130 employees, you're talking 20 or 30 of these individuals going into that program.
That's right. Again, if y'all just tell us what class it is you want us to have them do that on, we'll ask them to do that. We don't have any, again, that are currently that are 60 and 20. So what they can do is look at our current employee roster and assume that, make some assumption that X percent will stay until they've got 20 years of service and reach they've got, of course, actuaries are assumptions anyway, but if they could take our current roster and sort of manipulate it somehow or another, I think it can give you something.
Even if you look at the 130, 132 employees.
124, 25, I think.
Right. So we take that and just play that number out. We aren't talking about a large number. You might be talking, if at the top end, 12. So it's not an impact. That's the point. And you spread it out over 130, it's negated right down to, it's a simple fact. Do we want to offer this to the employee as an opportunity or not? A yes or a no vote on that.
Okay.
And it should be on the agenda for.
Now, is it, Mr. Maxwell, would it be your, understand that the benefit to the employee would be what?
Remaining on city health insurance program.
Even though they do stay on with Cobra, right?
They don't go to Cobra, they just stay on the program and pay.
But I mean,
their-
today, they could, right? If they left here, they would switch it over to Cobra, would they?
No.
Well, they could.
They could,
Mr.
but-
Mayor, but I think what initially brought this on, if I am correct, is that the employee does not want to transfer to COBRA, but wants to keep the situation as is, just paying through the city or sending her check or his check to the city, instead of sending that
Right.
same amount to COBRA.
And the additional cost is like 2% to be on Cobra, right?
To any employee that goes to COBRA on that.
And Cobra runs for a certain period of time.
Cobra runs for 18 months.
And then you're out.
Right.
So if you retire 60, you're gonna find a problem.
You're gonna have a gap. Yeah.
That's right. So it's very simple.
Well, you could,
Again, my only concern, Mr. Mayor, with this whole thing, and not gonna lay it out there, is if it is that specific, 60 years of age and 20 years of service, it's going to affect some of our employees who have been committed and are dedicated to this city for a longer service period of time. And what are we saying to those individuals? And now what Mr. Rush has indicated about if you're 55 and you got 30 and you reach
The
a
total.
level of 80 years or better, that may be something you might want to look at and consider. I don't know.
Simple. Change it to 50. I mean, it's not.
Well, we're gonna,
I hear what you're saying, Mr. Beresford.
we're gonna talk about this, a little more at the next meeting, and it will be on the, agenda for that, so. I think we've got an idea.
I'm sorry. I'm not sure I know what question to pose.
I believe
for you to
60 and
take
20.
action on.
We picked 60-20.
And that was the
That was-
question initially.
Now, if it's a concern, Ms. Tanner, Mr. Rush, that's fine, just move it to 50-20.
I think we, excuse me,
Right.
I thought we had asked somewhere to find out if there was an economic impact to the city by making any of this change, because once you go 60-20, 55-25, doesn't really matter, and you allow these people to stay on your medical plan, when the retirement age gets cranked up to 66 and 67, they're still gonna be there, and our pool costs are gonna go up. I presume that's the case.
And I believe that there's been a difficult time in our broker answering that question because of the non-specificity of the question. They can't ascertain economic impact until we define the class that they're being asked to evaluate, and we've never done that.
The classes.
Well, there's 3 classes they identified.
I mean, if it's emerging tonight, that's fine, we can go back and say, if we took our current employee roster, and anybody who attained the age of 50 with 20 years of service out into the reasonable future, what kind of economic impact would that have on us? We can ask that question, if that's the question you want to ask.
Well, could we ask that question along with the, a total of 80 years based on our current employee roster? Like Mr. Rush had mentioned there?
80 years of age?
No.
55.
A total of 80,
So 65 and 15, or?
yeah, or 55 and 25.
Yeah. I didn't understand that. Yeah, we do it.
Well, how about those 2 scenarios? we asked for a
50
financial
50
evaluation of that, those two scenarios.
Combination that goes up to 80.
It was 50, 20, and then 80 combo. No, he said 50-50 last, but see, that's been the problem in asking the question.
I missed 80-20, or maybe
80 combo with 50-20.
80 combo.
Okay. All right.
All right, we got that.
We're clear as mud.
All right, so we'll get back into this again, unfortunately, next, in 2 weeks. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, we thought we should have at least an address or the opportunity for a rate study issue, but I presume that will be discussed in greater detail on Saturday, so we want to defer that until when that circumstance will be.
Well, you know, I think we did talk about it at the last meeting and kind of outlined what they had recommended. We haven't really, maybe Saturday we will have a little more time to get a little more in depth, but if anyone would like to speak on that tonight,
Yeah, I would, because I've done a little homework on this, and then in looking at the comparative rate studies, and what they would do, as far as Canton right now, our rates are fairly low, and then if we would try to raise our rates to the median, I was just doing some studies on this, but one thing that caught my eye that's probably the most important is our commercial water rate, not sewer, but just water. And that's as posted, was $28.75. It's like less than half of Fulton County and about 1/4 of our neighboring communities. And as far as gallons, commercial was 1.1 million gallons, and residential is 1.5. And so if we, or that's the dollars, I'm sorry. Commercial was 1.1 million, and residential dollars was 1.5 million. Now, if we were to give our system to Cherokee County immediately, commercial water rate would go up 67%. Now, or the combined rate. If we were to increase our water rate just by 300% and still be below the median, we could probably gain about $2 more million in our water. So, and I don't know any business beating the door down to come to Canton because the water rates are cheap. So I think we should, if we want to be even with our neighboring communities, we can raise that particular rate, not the sewer rate so much, but that particular rate, we could raise quite a
the
bit.
commercial rate with and how does that compare with the Cherokee Water and Sewer Authority?
It's, let me see.
Commercial rate?
Cherokee Water and Sewer rate is $125.20 versus our $28.75. And let's see, I don't have and the median for the area is $115.09. So we have quite a bit of room there to raise our rates and increase our revenue.
That's almost hard to believe, isn't it?
It is. It shocked me. And then the other thing too is the commercial rate. I understand we're paying something somewhere between $2.26 to $2.29. Our commercial rate for water, but we're selling it to Waleska at $2.25. So we could raise it a penny or two there too.
Right, so you could raise the wholesale rates. You could also, I guess you can, and also, I would, I don't know what effect would raising the rates of those who don't live in the city, out of city residents. Some jurisdictions certainly do that.
Well, in talking to the Marietta Cobb Water and Sewer Authority, they raised the rates 50% in 1 year a couple of years ago, and they've been raising 11, 12% a year. We haven't been doing that on a consistent basis.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
follow up on Mr. Rush, on page 81 of the audit lists the rates the city is charging these outside water companies. You said $2.25 for Waleska. We have Cherokee County Water and Sewer Authority at $2.25. Everybody's $2.25, and the sewer rates are $3.93. So we should look at that also, because that's almost giveaway.
I think we need to analyze our rate structure
Right.
comprehensively before we do that.
I hadn't seen that one before, because on this rate study, it didn't show it, but on page 81, so any reference, you might want to look at that and see what that
There was a article in the paper, I wanted to make sure everyone, it mentioned, and this was mentioned at the meeting, but it says here, water and sewer rates were last increased 3 years ago. And prior to that, it was roughly 10 years before the last hike was made. That is not accurate. The rates that throughout the years from 2000 is a 7% increase, 2002 a 6.8 wholesale, 2004 there was a 6% retail and wholesale. 2005 there was a 2.8% increase. 2007 a 7% water and a 14% sewer. 2008 was the 15% that we implemented. And it also in the article it says of the $8 million the city took out in bonds, which is reservoir, just less than $1 million has been unspent. That too is not accurate. We have not written checks for $7 million out of there, and probably a long way from it. But I just wanted to make sure that those reading that didn't get the wrong idea about those items there. With regard to the rate study, we've heard the recommendations, certainly, but I think there are quite a number of alternatives that we need to investigate and really look at. And Mr. Rush has just mentioned some comparative rate analysis there. I think one thing that we need to consider is, you know, if we're talking about what the looking at the proposed or recommended rates for the next 4 years, if you added them up, it was 65%, but if you actually calculated the increase on top of the other increase, you probably were about double in 48 months. I think that's unreasonable to expect, quite honestly, our residents to think about paying that if we had to. Now, there's alternatives perhaps. Some of those items may not need to be done right away that were included in that study. I think we need to look and talk to the Cherokee Water and Sewer Authority, and we have had initial discussion. I think it would be wise on our part to at least investigate that as a possibility of some consolidation or merger with the Cherokee County Water and Sewer Authority. The bottom line here, as I've said before, is that we cannot have our residents paying an unreasonably high amount for water and sewer above and beyond other jurisdictions. I just simply don't believe we can do that. And if we can assure our residents that we are going to provide, or they are provided, water and good sewer service, then I think we will have done our jobs. So I'm going to ask, in our initial meeting with some members of the Water and Sewer Authority, we decided that we would ask some of our council members to sort of form a committee, and we form a committee just to meet with them for the purpose of discussion. That's it. There's nothing being done other than discussing it, see if there is a mutually beneficial situation here that certainly help us both. And I would like to ask Mr. Rush, Mr. Goodwin, and Mr. Beresford to serve in that capacity and in that discussion, and I will certainly participate from the standpoint of an ex officio member if that's what we need. But I would like to ask if that's okay, if y'all would be willing to do so. And then to bring whatever discussion results we have back to here as just one item among a number of alternatives to our current dilemma. Does anyone else have anything in that, for that, Jack?
I just wanted to say, you know, we're talking in percentages, and it sounds tremendously high, but on the study that we got back, on the comparison, for instance, right now, our average on 5,000 gallons is $23.50. If we were to raise that bill 20%, which sounds tremendously high, you're talking about less than $5, a little bit over $5. So I just want everybody to have that in perspective. It doesn't necessarily mean that this is going to double, triple, whatever. You're talking less than 20 cents a day. That doesn't mean that we're going to do that. I just want one of the alternatives out there, but I didn't want everybody to panic and think their water bill is gonna jump $20, $30, whatever.
Mr. Rush?
Just to supplement what Mr. Goodman has said, that if we were to raise our rates 20%, Canton, that would put us at the median for the local areas. So we would be, in the ballpark more or
Right,
less.
I thoroughly understand that what concerns me though is whether the recommendation that was made is not just 20% today, but 10% October the 1st, and then over the next 24 to 36 months, another 35%.
Well, but that all assumed a new $27 million water plant that may need to be built, but I'm one who would want to do a lot more homework before we recommended a new $27 million water plant.
Yeah, all this is part of the alternatives and what we're looking at right now, and it all has to come together here. Mr. Bishop?
We're gonna have our goal setting meeting coming up.
Yes.
This should be on the agenda.
Yes.
And then in 2 weeks, we should have on the agenda for a vote to either do the 20% because of the need to get it started immediately. And that's it, just the 20%. Then it'll give us room to evaluate the other alternatives we have. And it's not saying we're going to go with another rate increase in October or whatever.
That you do with don't merge systems or whatever.
Right, but we do need to do that one to get some relief, and it should be on the agenda. And I would like to ask that to be on the agenda for 2 weeks.
Remember, and again, I'm not trying to beat it to death, we can go into great detail with it at the planning session, but remember, we've got 1.3 plus or minus, not in this year's budget, that we know we're gonna have to make a bond payment on. We gotta come up with that money, and maybe some more, given great skies and some of these other things that were not in the budget as well.
But it was my understanding that we have a certain amount in reserves in the water fund, that if we did not make that increase immediately, we wouldn't suddenly evaporate or anything. We'd still be around. And we would have, yes, sir.
Just one comment on that, Mr. Mayor. In my inquiries this week, I was advised that about $480,000 of that fund is untouchable because that's deposit money that we are by law not permitted to use. And I'm assuming that the information is correct.
That would be interesting, is that all the deposits that we have throughout history? I just wondered, I wondered some thousand, yeah. I tend to agree with you, we shouldn't be using, that's my opinion too, is that we shouldn't be using
I thought
money
I
that.
remembered a higher number than that in our audit. Scott, I don't know if you remember or not. I thought I remembered a higher number than that, but anyway, the point is, whatever the number is, we can.
I agree with what you were saying there. I'm not sure that's the way historically it's been handled, but I agree with you. Yes.
Was there an agreement that we'd have that on the?
Yes.
Well, I think we'll have it on, we'll have a discussion on the agenda, whether or not it's actually some particular motion or not. We need to look at that.
What?
We can't make any motion here.
No, I said we could make the motion in 2 weeks. We can have
Right,
a discussion,
that
make the
can
motion
happen
in
in
2
2
weeks.
weeks,
But it'll
sure.
be on the agenda.
Sure.
We'll put it there.
Okay,
Let me, before
Go
I
ahead.
conclude my report, let me mention 2 or 3 other things, just for information. New water and sewer statements, remember, we're going from the postcard that folks have been accustomed to receiving for the last 50 years to an 8.5 by 11 in an envelope. So a lot of folks will start getting a strange bill in the mail that they may not recognize, and hope they'll not can it as trash mail and wait on that postcard, because the postcard's not gonna come anymore after we make that transition. And I believe the last I understood, there may be a period of a couple of weeks as we're transitioning when online credit cards cannot be accepted. Correct, Scott? Latter part of this month, so can still take credit cards in the office, but not online. One other thing, and both Crystal and Janet Just credit card?
Just a card, okay. Just online payments by way of credit card.
Emergency, I'm sorry, emergency notification system, Crystal and Janet have both done a good job of beginning the process, which will be a long process, perhaps unending process, of trying to help get the message out to the public about that system, and it is, we've made some improvements to the website, so it's easy for somebody now to go onto our website and sign up, or if they don't have computer access, to call City Hall, and the ladies who answer the phone have been encouraged to make that sign-up process easy. But here's the thing that y'all are gonna have to decide with respect to weather notices. Do you want the public to have to opt in, or do you want the public to have to opt out? And before you answer that question, don't you have to answer tonight, but I encourage you to think about it. About a month ago, there were some weather forecasts for 3 a.m. weather event. And we did not pull the trigger on that particular night because we had woken up X thousand folks at 3 a.m. with a weather event that may not have actually materialized as it could have, but the purpose was to put people on notice. So at some point in time, we're going to have to decide, you're going to have to decide, does the public opt in for those weather notices, or does the public opt out for those weather notices? Because there's a 24-hour period of time in which they can come.
As an initial survey, how many around here would suggest that they opt in? How many would suggest they opt out?
So everybody understands the question. If you would be automatically enrolled in the weather notification if you were in the system. You'd get that notice at any point in time. That would be, you would have to opt out. If you opted in, it would be that you would not be automatically included for weather notification. You would have to be on a separate registry for weather notifications at any time, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year.
Now, my understanding is, and that at 3 o'clock in the morning, both your cell phone and your home phone would go off. Okay? And if you laid your cell phone somewhere else, you may be running through the house and, hunting this one, hunting here, going off.
Well, you may be hunting anyway if that tornado had blown it out in the yard. So.
But, yeah, you might be. Yes, sir.
It's like that little weather radio. You have set 3 o'clock in the morning,
It's gonna
that
go
little
off.
thing's gonna start buzzing and going off. So if you want that security, then that's what you're gonna opt in for to have it.
Right.
So that, and you can pick it the little radio.
I think that's the key, if that's what you want.
Goes off sometimes, so,
Okay, anyone else?
Thank you.
I wanted to mention one thing. I had someone discussing about bicycles in Bowling Park. There was a complaint that I had about that, and I can't remember exactly who it was. But what?
Wasn't it Andy?
No, that was here.
Well, that was here. It was different.
No, wasn't it?
Heritage Park.
Yeah, I think this was Bowling. Might have been Heritage.
Heritage was the question on the sidewalk, do you put a runway
Right.
down?
We talked about that a long time ago.
Yes.
And our folks have done, and I've sent you, all of y'all, emailed all of y'all a pattern
Right.
marking and asked you to tell me if that was all right or not all right. I think I heard from one person who said it was okay, and I
I
didn't
don't
hear
think I
from
saw that.
anybody else.
I didn't see that.
I emailed it, but at any rate, we've asked it, Dave, well,
I think this is supposed to be Heritage, and I think the one that I had was, someone, there was like this was like people in those stretch pants and all that stuff, racing bikes was the problem, So spandex, and helmets and everything, and adults. I'm not talking about children with training wheels, I'm talking about adults, and they're pretty much racing.
That was Heritage Park, Mayor.
It was Heritage?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I stand corrected, I'm sorry. We had bowling typed on here, but anyway, I think that, we need to look at that somehow or another, or I don't know how you actually control that, or.
Mayor?
Yes,
I think at the meeting, when Mr. Anderson brought it up, we said to paint a line down the sidewalk and with a certain proportion, I think it was like 60-40, and mark a bicycle path and the rest pedestrian. And I thought we did that in November or
I think,
something.
yeah, but that, this came in after that, this is very
Oh, but
recent.
I don't think the line's down there, is it?
I was gonna tell you, I sent the email out, I thought everybody got a copy, somebody got a copy, because somebody responded to me, they thought it was, that it looked like a good idea. Mr. Ken Jimmy's staff has been requested, since that email was sent out, that pattern was sent out, to go ahead and put those lines down permanently with a little bicycle, facsimiles, emblems on them, and I think that's underway. I think we've not been able to get to it yet, but that's underway, correct?
Yes, sir.
Jack?
We talked about this one time before, and actually, I met with Mr. Kent Jimmy, and we actually had, lights held over to light the park so that you would be able to see over there after it got dark, mainly for winter hours more than anything else. But we also talked about turning the bicycles in one direction and you walking in another direction so that bicycles aren't coming by you and coming against you, so you know where they're at, because we had some problems with people wondering about getting hit with bicycles. And I think that would make sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. You know, Mayor Mulgrew worked his collarbone over there.
Yes.
On the bicycle.
On the bicycle, absolutely. He wasn't jogging, he was riding the bicycle, and I think a child or something, or somebody pulled out in front of him, and he kind of locked the bike down, went over the handlebars and all that. Actually broke his collarbone. So, you know, we need to be aware of that and really, maybe give some more effort to maybe getting something done, or at least make signage or whatever.
Let's get the striping down with the bicycle emblems as soon as you can, Dave. I know it's spring and grass cutting season, and they've been working in Canton Park downtown and all that, but as soon as we can get that done, we'll see how it goes.
Mr. Mayor, while you're on bicycles, and since you had it on Bowling Park, I was going to reiterate the fact that the Boy Scout troop and Mr. Owens had been working on a multi-use trail over at Bowling Park, and that was gonna be for, pedestrians to use for walking and biking, and I really don't know what the state of that is, but that was something that had been already approved by the Army Corps of Engineers, I think, and they had the plans drawn, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and I think that's something that we need to pull off the back burner and put it on the stove to revisit, and so we can get that underway again. Mr. Wood, Mr. Ken Jimmy, or whomever else that may need to be involved with that. That multi-use trail over there at Bowling Park for biking and walking and whatever else.
Okay. The only other item I wanted to go over is the discussion regarding the engineering report on the recent road paving bids that we had. I had concern, and I think maybe others may have too to some degree, concerns that we only got 2 bids, and actually one of them got rejected for a variety of reasons. But I'm going to read this executive summary real quick, and then we'll look at some other items. On page 1, the City of Canton recently took bids for the above referenced street repairs, and these include Lightfoot Drive, Archer, Winooki, Birch Street, Breeze Hill Court, and Breeze Hill Lane. The bids for the 6 streets were $503,000 and $571,000 respectively. The contractor submitting the low bid recommended an alternates to save an additional $58,500. The high bid was disqualified for a number of reasons, and it was recommended that the council approve the alternate bid of $444,500. Since it appeared highly unusual for only 2 bids to come in on this project, I actually engaged Canton Wood Engineers to review the bids and to provide the city with an engineering cost estimate of the project. The results and comments are in the report that you have. In summary, the final bid of $444,500 is approximately $110,500 greater than the engineer's cost estimate. According to the engineer's report, the Georgia DOT in most cases will rebid any projects where the low bid is greater than 10% more than the engineer's cost estimate. Furthermore, in examining the two bid proposals, it was noted that one of the bidders is listed on the other bidder's proposal as a subcontractor. This would indicate, in my opinion, a lack of independence between the two bids. It is my recommendation that the project should be rebid and the city engage an engineering firm with transportation expertise to provide a request for bids, and that the solicitation be advertised in an appropriate manner as directed by the engineering firm, and that the professional engineering firm follow the project through completion with adequate inspections to ensure the most cost-effective project. It is never too late to do the right thing. And I think that's what we're gonna have to do. If you look at the page 2, this is the report that they have, and I hope that between now and the next meeting you will take a look at those. What they actually did was the engineer's cost estimate, they went out and looked at each one of these streets, and they estimated quantities based on the proposal, of course, that was the request for bids. They estimated quantities. They took the 2010 average of the Georgia DOT unit prices that they had gotten on bids and applied that to those unit quantities. Okay. The first one, when they did that, they got $392,000, and that included a 10% contingency. Realizing that the Georgia DOT does a lot of very large projects, they picked out one small project that the DOT has done and utilized the unit prices from that project, and they came up with $412,000. Okay? Now, if you will look over on page 8, you'll see the outline of the two bids there. Of course, the high bid was 42.8% greater than the engineer's estimate. The low bid was 25.8% greater than the engineer's estimate. The alternate, which was proposed by the low bidder and saving $58,500, the engineer's cost estimate actually based on the alternate proposal would have saved close to $66,000, so it was a little bit more. But the bottom line is roughly the engineer's cost estimate, is still around $110,000 less than the actual adjusted bid. So I think that between now and the next week, you can look at the page 9 under that proposal there, and look at page 10. That's just one page out there, and you will see that that bidder 1, the low bidder is also shown as a subcontractor to the high bidder. Now, I think that's enough of that, so I hope you will take that, we'll look through it, and at the next meeting we will decide what we need to do. Any questions? Okay, if not, I'll entertain the motion. Sir?
Just a quick question.
Yes, sir.
The specs that the consulting were using, what specs?
Yeah, they were using what was advertised as best they could.
Okay.
I understand they had to make some assumptions. Yeah.
Yep, okay.
Okay, have a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Second.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you.